The wind howled like a living beast, clawing at the cliffs of northern Montana. Snow fell in furious spirals, erasing the world into a sheet of white silence. Somewhere in that blinding storm, a single cabin stood its chimney,
Let's go!
coughing weak trails of smoke, the only sign of life in a land devoured by winter. Inside, the fire burned low, a faint heartbeat against the cold. A man sat by the window, his hands motionless above a folded letter. The paper trembled with every gust outside, but his eyes, gray, heavy, and distant, did not move. The candle beside him had melted halfway down to wax and shadow. The rifles above the hearth were polished unused. Time had turned everything into a monument of waiting. A faint growl broke the silence. Two dogs stirred near the door. A massive German shepherd, ears pricked, and a silver-gray husky, restless and alert. The shepherd Atlas fixed on something beyond the frosted window. The husky Luna whined softly, her blue eyes reflecting a light that shouldn't have been there, pale, pulsing alive. The man rose. The floorboards creaked beneath his boots as he crossed the room. Outside, the storm screamed louder, but there it was. Again, a flash between the trees, a shimmer of unnatural light. Atlas barked once, sharp and urgent. He hesitated at the threshold, hand hovering over the latch, the air around him thick with years of ghosts and regrets. Then he opened the door. Snow roared in, swallowing the warmth. Atlas leapt forward into the storm, Luna close behind. The man followed his figure, vanishing into the white abyss. Today we follow a veteran named Jonas Keene and the two loyal dogs who would lead him into a secret the mountain never meant to reveal. The storm hadn't stopped for hours. It screamed against the cabin walls like something alive, angry that I still dared to breathe. I remember thinking that if I could just stay still long enough, if I didn't move, didn't hope, didn't remember, maybe the world would forget I existed. The fire was dying again. That fragile heartbeat of warmth inside the fireplace flickered, fighting the wind that hissed through every crack in the wood. Atlas lay near the door, motionless but awake. His ears twitched at the rhythm of the wind. A soldier listening for command, even in rest. Luna curled by my feet, her body trembling not from cold but from the kind of anticipation animals feel before something shifts in the air. That night had the weight of endings. The letter on my table still waited its words, like small frozen knives. Foreclosure, default, eviction. It meant that even this cabin, my last corner of the world, would no longer be mine. Maybe it was fair. The world had already taken everything else. I stared at the window until I could almost convince myself that the storm outside wasn't real, that it was just another memory from Afghanistan. The sound of sand instead of snow, the smell of gun oil instead of pine. But then Luna lifted her head and let out a low, uncertain whine. Something shifted outside. At first I thought it was just the storm playing tricks again. The wind could sound like footsteps if you listened long enough. But then came the second sound, a dull thump, rhythmic, deliberate. Not wind, not snow, something else. Atlas rose instantly, a silent shadow of discipline and instinct. His nose pointed toward the door, his muscles coiled tight. Luna followed, tail low, body tense. The two of them moved in perfect unison, like they shared a language I could only half remember. "Easy," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was talking to, them or myself. The third sound came, 3 knocks, slow, certain. No one should have been out there. Not in a storm like this. Not in miles of wilderness where even the wolves stayed in their dens. I stood, hand resting on the old rifle above the hearth. My boots felt heavier than usual, the kind of heavy that came from 7 years of not wanting to move. Atlas growled low and controlled the sound vibrating through the cabin floor. Luna pressed closer to me, her eyes flashing in the dim light. The door rattled once, as if pushed by the wind, and then silence. A silence so complete it hummed. When I finally pulled the latch and cracked the door open, a wave of icy air punched through the room, snuffing out the candlelight. Snow surged inward, stinging my face. I couldn't see more than a few feet beyond the threshold. The world was nothing but white and noise. And then light. A pale blue shimmer, faint but pulsing, blinked between the trees. It wasn't lightning, it was too controlled, too intentional. Like a signal, like someone calling out through the storm. Atlas barked once, sharp, commanding, then looked back at me. He wanted permission. I gave it. The German shepherd burst through the doorway, swallowed instantly by snow and night. Luna hesitated, looking at me with something almost human in her eyes. Fear, trust, or both. Then she followed. For a moment I stood there, gripping the doorframe, feeling the cold bite at my skin. The rational part of me screamed to shut the door, to wait it out. The rest of me, the hollow, restless, half-alive part, couldn't. Because that light, whatever it was, felt familiar. It pulsed 3 times, paused, then again, 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. Morse code, SOS. And just like that, the soldier in me woke up. I threw on my coat and slung the rifle over my shoulder. The wind clawed at me as I stepped out the door, slamming shut behind me with a sound like finality. The cold hit like a physical blow. Each breath seared my lungs. I followed the faint tracks Atlas had carved into the drifts, my flashlight cutting weak tunnels through the storm. The beam caught flakes of snow that looked more like ashes falling from the sky. "Atlas," I called out, but my voice was instantly devoured by the wind. "Luna." A distant bark answered a warning, not distress. Then another sound joined it, a low hum deep enough to vibrate in my chest. It came from ahead, from the direction of that strange light. As I pushed forward, the ground dipped, and I realized we'd reached a small ravine I'd never noticed before. The storm had masked its edges, but the dogs had found a narrow path down. At the bottom, the light was stronger now, flickering from behind a curtain of snow. I saw Atlas first, standing guard beside a sheer wall of granite. Luna was pawing at something near the base, a smooth rock that looked too perfect, too deliberate. When my flashlight swept over it, I froze. There, faint but visible under the ice, was a mark burned into the stone, a triangle enclosing a single star. I knew that symbol. It belonged to a covert reconnaissance unit from my years in the service. A division that was never officially acknowledged. We'd called it Helios. And it had died in Afghanistan, along with everyone in it. Everyone but me. My throat tightened. How the hell? Atlas pressed his paw against the rock. A click echoed through the storm, a small metallic whisper that didn't belong in nature. The hum grew louder. I stumbled back as a seam of light appeared, slicing vertically down the stone. Snow and dust fell away as the granite face began to split, grinding apart to reveal something impossible. A steel door hidden inside the mountain. For a moment the storm seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the deep mechanical whir as the door slid open, spilling a warm golden glow onto the snow. Atlas looked at me, ears up, waiting for command. Luna whined softly, her breath rising like smoke. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" I muttered. My words disappeared into the air. 7 years of silence. 7 years of guilt and ghosts. And now this. A message written in steel and storm. I should have turned back. Every instinct told me that. But something inside me, something I thought had died on a desert ridge long ago, was stirring again. Purpose. I stepped closer. The heat from the open passage brushed my face, carrying with it a scent of oil and metal. Atlas slipped inside first, moving like he belonged there. Luna followed tail, low but steady. When I crossed the threshold, the door closed behind us, with a hiss cutting off the world outside. The storm vanished in an instant. The silence that replaced it was heavier than any noise I'd ever known. We stood in a narrow corridor lined with steel panels. Dim emergency lights ran along the floor, casting amber reflections that shimmered like liquid gold. My breath fogged the air as I whispered to myself, "This isn't happening." Atlas trotted ahead, nose low, tail stiff. Luna stayed close, her eyes scanning every corner. Every instinct screamed military. The design was unmistakable, identical to the underground outposts I'd seen overseas, right down to the reinforced bulkheads and the faint smell of disinfectant. Someone had built this place to last. And someone had hidden it so well that not even time had found it. We reached a junction. On the wall, half buried in dust, was a control panel glowing weakly. I brushed it with my glove, and a flicker of light revealed words stenciled above it: Helios 04 Cascade Sector. My pulse quickened. Cascade. That was this mountain range. Helios hadn't died after all. It had buried itself. Atlas barked softly, snapping me back. He was staring down a side corridor where a faint vibration echoed, steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. For a moment, I hesitated. That same feeling of isolation that had followed me for years rose again, whispering that this was madness, that I'd already lost too much. But Luna nudged my leg, her eyes steady and sure. I looked at the dog's 2 lives that had never left me, even when I'd stopped caring about my own. Atlas's amber gaze was sharp, commanding. Luna's blue eyes held something gentler, a quiet faith. "All right," I breathed. "Lead the way." They moved ahead together, paused silent on the metal floor. The corridor bent, narrowing until it opened into a chamber, a circular room with consoles, old monitors, and racks of equipment, all coated in a thin layer of frost. In the center of it all stood a single terminal, still running its screen, pulsing faintly with green text. I wiped the dust from it. The first line read, "Access, AUTSS, Keen J Clarence Omega." My blood turned to ice. This place knew me. The cursor blinked, waiting for input. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Outside, I could almost feel the storm pressing against the mountain, as if the world itself wanted to bury this secret again. I didn't know what waited on the other side of that screen, but for the first time in years, I wanted to know. That's how it began. The night the mountain called my name, and the ghosts of my past answered. Soft instrumental fades in low cello and distant wind. I thought I'd been left behind by the war, but sometimes the war remembers you. The mountain swallowed sound. Inside that steel corridor, the world outside ceased to exist. For a while, I just stood there, breathing the stale air, trying to understand what I was seeing. Every step echoed like a memory coming back from the dead. Atlas moved ahead with his steady, disciplined pace, while Luna's paws tapped softly beside me, her breath forming tiny clouds that vanished as fast as they appeared. The terminal behind me still glowed faintly with my name on it. It felt like a message left for a man who had stopped believing in fate. But fate didn't care whether I believed or not. It was already pulling me forward. The corridor stretched deeper into the mountain, and the deeper we went, the more I felt the cold change. It wasn't the sharp bite of winter anymore, but a dense electric chill that crawled under my skin. I could hear something faint, a pulse beneath the metal, like machinery sleeping under the surface. We turned a corner, and suddenly the lights came alive. A line of bulbs along the ceiling flickered on one by one, stretching far into the dark. It was like the mountain itself was waking up. Atlas froze. His ears perked and a low growl rumbled from his throat. Luna's tail lowered, and she pressed close to my leg. Ahead, something clattered, metal shifting on metal. I raised the rifle. My hands felt steadier than I expected. The soldier in me had returned, slow and reluctant, but still there. We moved closer, careful, the beam of my flashlight trembling on the wall. At the end of the hall, the path split into two. One side was blocked by collapsed steel beams, twisted and frozen with frost. The other led down into what looked like a maintenance tunnel. A faint wind came from that direction, carrying with it the scent of smoke and something else, ash maybe, or memory. I looked at Atlas. He was already heading down. Luna followed without hesitation. I didn't argue. The air grew colder as we descended. The floor was slick with ice, the walls dripping with condensation. Somewhere above us, the storm continued to roar, but it sounded far away now, like the echo of another world. Halfway down, my flashlight began to fade. The light sputtered, dimmed, then died altogether. The dark pressed in, heavy and absolute. That was when I saw it again, the faint blue shimmer just ahead. The same light that had pulled me from the cabin, pulsing in a slow rhythm, almost like it was breathing. Atlas barked once, and the sound bounced through the tunnel. I moved forward, my hand brushing against the cold wall for balance. The light grew stronger with every step, until it painted the corridor in an eerie glow. The tunnel ended abruptly. Before us was a wide cavern carved straight into the mountain's heart. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow. In the center stood a massive glass cylinder filled with what looked like frozen mist. Cables snaked out from its base connecting to consoles and generators long dead. And within that cylinder, buried beneath ice, was a man. He was suspended in a vertical sleep, his face pale, his body wrapped in what looked like some kind of exosuit. His eyes were closed, but his expression was peaceful, almost too peaceful for this place. Luna whined softly, tilting her head. Atlas sniffed the air, then let out a single low bark, uncertain. I stepped closer, the crunch of my boots echoing in the hollow chamber. There was no mistaking it now. I knew that face. Captain Hale. My commanding officer. My friend. He had died 7 years ago. Or at least, that was what the report said. Killed in a blast. During a failed operation. His body was never recovered. But he was here. Frozen, preserved, waiting. For a long time I just stood there, the storm outside forgotten. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from fear but from something deeper, recognition. The past wasn't just coming back. It had been waiting for me to find it. I touched the glass. It was cold enough to burn. A small red light blinked to life at the base of the cylinder. Then another. Then a soft hum filled the air, low and rising. Atlas barked sharply. Luna's fur bristled. Back, I whispered, stepping away. The hum grew louder. The floor vibrated. A thin crack split across the glass, spider webbing outward. Then with a hiss, the chamber released a burst of vapor that washed over us like fog. The light turned green. The hum stopped. And the man inside opened his eyes. They were cloudy at first, unfocused, then locked on me. For a second I saw confusion, then recognition. Jonas. The word came out as a broken rasp, carried through the hiss of escaping air. I stumbled back. That's impossible. He took a breath. Shallow, labored, but real. You came back. The machinery around him flickered with dying power. I could hear the generators straining, failing after years of silence. Hale's head fell against the glass, his hand pressing weakly against the other side. They buried us, he whispered. All of us. What is this place, I asked, though part of me already knew. The truth, he said. And the end of it. Before I could answer, the lights above us began to flicker violently. A warning klaxon blared somewhere deep in the complex, and a mechanical voice spoke through the static. Containment breach detected. Structural integrity compromised. I grabbed the rifle and looked around. We have to move. But Hale only smiled faintly, as if he'd already made peace with something I hadn't yet learned. Go, Jonas. Take what you find. Don't let them finish what they started. The lights dimmed again. The hum dropped to a low drone. I stepped forward, wanting to help, but the glass between us clouded with frost, sealing him away once more. Atlas barked furiously. Luna pulling at my sleeve, urging me toward the exit. The ceiling groaned above us, and a shower of ice fell from the rafters. I turned and ran. The tunnel shook behind me, pieces of metal raining down as the system collapsed. The light flickered faster now, strobing like lightning in the dark. Atlas led the way, Luna close behind both dogs, navigating the chaos as if they'd trained for it. By the time we reached the main corridor, the rumble had subsided into a distant echo. I stopped to catch my breath, leaning against the wall. My hands were shaking, not from cold but from everything I had just seen. Hale was alive, or something close to it, and he had known I would come. The corridor ahead was darker now, the emergency lights dimmed to a faint red. I followed them anyway, step by step, each one heavier than the last. We passed through another door, this one marked with the same triangle and star insignia, and entered a small control room. Dust coated the consoles. A single monitor blinked with intermittent power. I brushed it clean. Words appeared slowly across the screen. Project Helios. Active. Access required. There was a slot beside the console. A place for an identification card. I didn't have one, but when I placed my hand on the panel, the system beeped, and the message changed. Welcome back, Commander Keen. My heart stopped for a beat. Commander. That rank had been erased from every record years ago. They hadn't just hidden this place. They had hidden me. Atlas shifted uneasily. Luna whined, glancing toward a small passage at the back of the room. A faint light shimmered there, soft white, unlike the cold glow of the corridors. I followed it. The passage narrowed, then opened into a wide chamber that looked nothing like the others. It was natural stone, untouched by metal or machinery. In the center stood an ancient wooden door, its surface engraved with patterns that looked almost ceremonial. Snowflakes drifted from a crack above, landing softly on the floor. The air was still sacred somehow. I reached out, brushing the dust from the carvings. They formed a symbol I didn't recognize, a spiral surrounded by rays of light. Atlas sat beside me silent. Luna pressed her nose against the door and whined. It was warm to the touch. Behind it, I heard something faint, a hum, a heartbeat. I hesitated, palm resting on the wood, feeling its pulse match my own. Then, somewhere deep in the mountain, a distant explosion thundered. The lights flickered out completely. The door trembled once, as if something on the other side had awakened. And in that moment I knew I had crossed the point of no return. The mountain wasn't done with me. It was just beginning. The wooden door trembled again beneath my hand, a slow, rhythmic pulse, as though it had its own heartbeat. The light that had guided me this far was gone now. The mountain was silent, except for the low hum behind that door, a sound that crawled into my chest and refused to leave. Atlas stood still, muscles tight, while Luna pressed against my leg, her breath warm in the cold air. I didn't want to open it. Every part of me said that whatever waited inside would change everything. But I had come too far to turn back. The latch was old, frozen by time. It took both hands to force it open. The moment it gave way, a gust of air rushed past me, warm and stale, carrying a scent that didn't belong to this century. The chamber beyond was darker than the corridors I had left, but it wasn't empty. A faint, golden glow seeped from the floor like embers buried under ash. I stepped in slowly. The air was thicker here, heavier, filled with the faint hum of machines that still remembered what they had once done. Atlas moved first, nose to the ground, his tail stiff. Luna's paws made no sound as she followed him. The space opened into a large room built of stone and metal fused together. Along one wall were shelves of old documents, sealed in plastic stacks of drives, tapes, and boxes, marked with the same insignia I had seen before, the triangle and the star. I felt my pulse quicken. This was it, the heart of Helios, the secret that the world was never supposed to find. In the center of the room stood a circular console, half buried under dust. When I brushed my glove over its surface, lights flickered weakly to life. A projector hummed, sputtered, then cast an image into the air above it. For a moment, all I saw was static. Then a face appeared. Captain Hale. He looked younger than he had in that frozen chamber voice, steadier eyes, clear. The recording was old, but the clarity of his voice hit me like a hammer. "If you're watching this," he said, "then the fail-safe has broken. The project is no longer contained. And if you're the one, I think you are, Jonas, then you already know why." My throat closed. The dogs lifted their heads, sensing my stillness. "I told them it was a mistake," Hale continued. "We were supposed to build a defense system. That was the lie they fed us. In reality, it was something else, something that could rewrite a mind, erase guilt, create obedience. They called it moral recalibration, a weapon made not to kill, but to make killing easier." He paused, his gaze dropping as if he couldn't bear to look straight into the camera anymore. "They used us to test it. That's what Helios really was. We weren't soldiers. We were subjects." The room seemed to shrink around me. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. The wind outside, the years I'd spent, trying to forget the nights I woke up, choking on sand and ghosts, they all came back at once. Hale's voice went on, quieter now. "You survived, Jonas, because you were the first to reject it. You refused the implant. They called it insubordination. I called it humanity. That's why they erased you." The image flickered, but I couldn't look away. "They'll come for this place one day," he said. "When they do, it has to be destroyed. Everything here, data, hardware, memory, it all has to die. If it lives, they can build it again. He hesitated, then leaned closer. But before you burn it, I need you to understand what we built. The Helios system wasn't just designed to control soldiers. It could control anyone. Governments, citizens, the entire nations. You were right to walk away. You were the only one. The recording ended. The projector's light flickered once more and died. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of a war that had never really ended. Atlas pressed his head against my hand, grounding me. Luna sat at my feet, her eyes on the door, listening for whatever might come next. I looked around the room again. The shelves, the documents, the drives, every piece of it was evidence. Proof that the system hadn't been shut down. Proof that the war had never been about freedom. It had been about control. I found a stack of notebooks sealed in a crate. The writing was in Hale's hand, dates, coordinates, field notes. Between the pages were transcripts of psychological tests, diagrams of neural interfaces, lists of names. Mine was among them. A page fell loose and drifted to the floor. I picked it up. It was a photograph, black and white, taken years ago. A group of men in uniform standing beside a flag marked with the Helios emblem. Hale was there, smiling. And next to him, younger, sharper, full of conviction, was me. I felt the room tilt. The man in that picture looked certain. He believed he was fighting for something pure, something just. He didn't know he was standing beside the architect of something monstrous. I wanted to tear it apart, to erase it, like they had erased me. But Luna's quiet whine stopped me. She looked up, her eyes steady and knowing. She didn't see a monster, just a man who had run from his own reflection for too long. That was when I noticed the second console against the far wall. It was older, heavier, its surface covered in frost. Unlike the others, it was still humming faintly. I wiped it clean, and a single line of text appeared. Primary sequence armed. Below it, 2 buttons: activate and purge. I knew what it meant. One would awaken the system again. The other would erase it forever. My hands trembled. Every instinct in me screamed to end it, to finish what Hale had started. But what if the purge triggered something worse? What if the data, the truth, vanished with it, leaving nothing behind but silence? The lights dimmed as if the mountain itself were waiting for me to decide. I thought about the years I had spent hiding in that cabin, pretending I could outlast the ghosts. About the letter on the table, the one that told me my home was gone. About the faces of men I had lost, the ones who had trusted me. I couldn't hide anymore. I pressed activate. For a second, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath me shuddered. Lights exploded across the walls. The ceiling vibrated as dormant machinery came to life. Monitors blinked on, filling the chamber with data streams, images, maps, and names. I stepped back, shielding my eyes from the sudden brightness. One monitor in the corner showed a series of red markers spreading across a digital map of the world. Another displayed files labeled Civil Integration, Population Modeling, and Cognitive Reinforcement. It was all still running. They had never stopped. The voice of the system spoke through the speakers, calm and mechanical. "Welcome, Commander Keen. Final sequence authorization required." Atlas barked. Luna growled low and uneasy. "Authorization accepted," the voice continued. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said a word. The screens flickered again, and a single line of text appeared. "Welcome home, Jonas." I felt the blood drain from my face. The mountain wasn't just a vault. It was awake. It knew me. It had been waiting for me. Then came the sound, the same hum as before, only louder, deeper. The chamber lights turned red. The consoles began shifting, data encrypting, transmitting. Someone or something was using me as the final key. I tried to shut it down, but the command keys were locked. My access wasn't to stop it. It was to start it. I slammed my fist against the console. No, Atlas barked louder now, Luna pulling at my sleeve. The walls vibrated as if the mountain itself was alive. That was when I saw it, the small compartment near the base of the console. Inside was a drive glowing faintly blue, the core of the system. If I took it, I could expose everything. The proof, the names, the truth. But if I destroyed it, none of it would ever resurface. The red lights flashed faster. The voice returned. Security override initiated. Containment lockdown in 30 seconds. I ripped the drive from its socket. The room plunged into darkness. The humming stopped. The mountain went still. Only my breathing remained. Rough, uneven, human. Atlas nudged my leg. Luna leaned against me. The cold returned, seeping through the silence. I slipped the drive into my jacket and looked at the dogs. Time to go, I said. We turned toward the door, the only exit left. Behind us, the machines began to die one by one, their lights fading into blackness. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I finally understood what Hale had meant. The truth wasn't meant to free me. It was meant to wake me up. And now that I knew it, there was no going back. The drive pulsed faintly in my hand, the only living thing left in the dead chamber. Behind me, the last light of Helios flickered and died. The air grew still thick with the smell of metal and dust. I could almost hear the mountain exhale, as if relieved to finally rest. But peace never lasts long. Atlas's ears shot up first. Luna let out a low growl, her eyes fixed on the entrance. A sound echoed through the tunnel, distant at first, then sharper. Boots on steel. The rhythm of trained men. They had come, the ones Hale warned me about. The ones who never stopped the program. I slipped the drive into my coat and tightened my grip on the rifle. The safety clicked off with a sound that echoed too loudly in the silence. Atlas crouched low, ready. Luna's tail stiffened her body, tense but unafraid. The first flashlight beam sliced through the darkness. Voices followed, curt and disciplined. At least 6 of them, maybe more. They moved with the precision. I remembered the same drills, the same breathing patterns, my old unit. I could almost hear Hale's voice from years ago. Always assume they know you better than you know them. That meant I had one advantage. They thought I was dead. The tunnel split into 2 ahead, one leading up toward the surface, and another circling back toward the reactor core. I motioned for the dogs to stay close, and took the left path. My boots sank into the thin layer of snow that had blown in through the cracks above. The air grew colder, sharper, and somewhere in the distance, the storm roared again. For a brief moment, I could almost pretend it was just nature chasing me. Then a burst of gunfire tore that illusion apart. The bullets sparked against the steel wall beside me. I ducked behind a support beam, the impact ringing in my skull. Atlas barked furiously, Luna's growl turning into a sharp whine as a round ricocheted near her paws. I leaned out, fired twice, then again. 2 flashes, 2 bodies dropped. The tunnel filled with smoke and shouting. Years of muscle memory took over. Every move, every step, felt rehearsed, like I had never left the field. But this time the war wasn't about orders or flags. It was about the truth clutched against my chest. A voice called out from the other side of the tunnel. Calm, steady, familiar. Jonas Keene. Stand down. The sound of that voice froze me more than the cold. I knew it. Commander Reddick. My old superior officer. The man who had ordered my erasure. He stepped into the light helmet, off face marked by years, but eyes still sharp. You should have stayed gone, he said. You were useful once. But this, he gestured to the mountain, this is above you now. I kept my rifle raised. Helios was supposed to die, Reddick. You made sure of that. So why is it still breathing? He smiled faintly. Because it worked. Humanity needs control. You, of all people, should understand that. You saw what happens when we don't. You call erasing free will control, I said. That's not order. That's slavery. He took a step closer. You think people want freedom, Jonas. They want peace. They want to stop fighting. Helios gave us that chance. I could feel Atlas growling low beside me, Luna's breathing steady but ready. Peace built on obedience isn't peace, I said. It's a cage. Reddick sighed, almost regretful. I thought you'd say that. Then he raised his weapon. The tunnel exploded in light and sound. I hit the ground, rolled, and fired back. Atlas lunged, knocking one of the soldiers off balance, teeth sinking into armor. Luna darted between shadows, dragging a flash grenade from my belt and dropping it near the corner where 2 more men were advancing. The blast filled the air with white light. I moved through it like instinct, close-range, quick bursts. One by one they fell. But Reddick was still standing unfazed, stepping forward through the smoke like a ghost that refused to die. He fired once. Pain ripped through my shoulder. I dropped to one knee, blood hot against the cold. Atlas growled and charged, but Reddick swung his rifle like a club, knocking him back. Luna leapt, teeth catching fabric, pulling, buying me seconds. I used them. I fired again. One shot. Clean. It hit him just below the collar. He staggered, eyes wide, not in pain but disbelief. He looked down at the wound, then at me. "You could have been part of something greater," he said. "I already am," I answered. "I'm free." He fell, the echo of his body hitting the metal floor, blending with the distant thunder of the storm outside. For a moment I just sat there, breathing hard, the rifle heavy in my hand. Atlas limped back to me, fur streaked with blood that wasn't his. Luna pressed her head against my knee, her eyes full of worry. "I'm all right," I whispered, though it wasn't true. My arm burned, the pain deep and raw. But the drive was still in my pocket. That was all that mattered. We made our way toward the upper tunnel, following the faint draft that carried the scent of snow and pine. The air grew colder as we climbed. Behind us the bass groaned, a deep mechanical sound, the death rattle of something ancient. When we reached the exit, I looked back one last time. The red emergency lights were fading. The mountain was swallowing Helios whole again, burying it under its own weight. Atlas nudged my hand. Luna gave a low whimper. I knew what they were thinking. It was over. But it didn't feel like victory. Outside, the storm had calmed. The world was quiet, blanketed in white. The first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, turning the snow to gold. We walked for hours before I finally stopped. My shoulder throbbed, and exhaustion pressed down like gravity. I sank to one knee. The dogs circling closed their breath, fogging the air. I pulled the drive from my pocket. Its faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. This was the proof Hale had died for. The evidence that could bring the truth into the light. But holding it, I realized something else. The fight wasn't against the system or the men who built it. It was against the part of me that wanted to stay silent. Silence was easy. Truth was the hard part. I stood again, the wind brushing snow from my coat. In the distance, the sun finally rose above the ridge. That light cut through the clouds, clean and pure, falling across Atlas and Luna as they stood beside me. They had led me here through storm and blood, through ghosts and machines. And now, for the first time, I didn't feel lost. I didn't know what the world would do with the truth or what it would cost me to share it. But I knew what Hale would have said. The truth is never safe, but it is always necessary. So I walked toward the rising sun, the dogs at my side, the mountain behind us collapsing into silence. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt alive. The storm had finally broken. By the time we reached the valley, the wind had died to a whisper, and the snow had stopped falling. The sky above was still gray, but the kind of gray that promised morning instead of night. The mountain stood behind us, silent, sealed again, under a new layer of snow, as if nothing had ever happened beneath it. I turned once more to look back. The air was still thick with mist, but through it, I could almost see the faint outline of the ridge where the entrance had been. The weight of what was buried there pressed against my chest, but it no longer felt suffocating. It felt finished. Atlas limped slightly as he walked beside me, his fur matted with dried blood. Luna kept close to him, brushing her shoulder against his, as if to share her warmth. They had followed me through hell and brought me back again. I owed them more than I could ever say. We found shelter in a hollow at the edge of the forest where the wind couldn't reach us. I built a small fire using broken branches, and for the first time in days I sat without my rifle within reach. The flames cracked and hissed, sending sparks into the air. The drive, the same one I had pulled from the heart of Helios, sat in my hand. Its light was dimmer now, pulsing faintly like a dying star. All the names, the files, the truths that had cost so many lives were inside it. I could expose it all, or I could destroy it here now, and let the world move on in ignorance. Luna rested her head on my knee, eyes half closed. Atlas lay near the fire, his breathing steady but shallow. Their calmness anchored me. It reminded me of why I had come down from that mountain alive, because they never left me behind. For a long time I just listened to the wind, moving softly through the trees, to the sound of melting ice dripping from branches, to my own heartbeat, slowing for the first time in years. It was strange how peace could feel almost heavier than war. When the sun finally began to rise, I stood. The light spread across the snow like gold poured from the heavens, and the world seemed new, untouched. I pulled the drive from my pocket one last time. Its cold surface caught the morning light. Maybe the world deserved to know. Maybe it didn't. But Hale's words echoed in my mind. The truth isn't meant to free you. It's meant to wake you up. I realized then that it wasn't the data that mattered. It was what we did after knowing it. And I had already been awakened. I threw the drive into the fire. It cracked, sparked once, then was gone, swallowed by the flames. The past went with it. Atlas lifted his head, watching quietly. Luna barked once, soft and brief, as if to say it was done. I smiled for the first time in a long while. I took the letter from my pocket, the foreclosure notice that had once felt like a death sentence, and tore it apart piece by piece. The ashes danced with the smoke carried upward by the same wind that once tried to bury me. When the fire burned down to embers, I gathered my things. The dogs rose with me, ready without command. We began walking toward the open plain, where the sunlight touched the frozen earth and turned it into a river of light. Every step away from that mountain felt lighter, as though the weight of 7 years was melting off my back. For the first time, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward it, toward whatever life was waiting beyond the horizon. The air was clean, filled with the scent of pine and thawing soil. My shoulder still ached, where the bullet had torn through, but pain was just a reminder that I was still here, still human. I stopped once at the crest of a hill. Below, the valley opened wide, endless, and quiet. The world had never looked so vast. Atlas sat beside me, tail brushing the snow. Luna trotted ahead, nose to the wind, impatient for whatever came next. I reached down, resting my hand on Atlas's head. "We made it," I said. My voice was rough but steady. He gave a soft rumble of approval, eyes half closed in the light. Luna turned and barked again, her reflection shimmering in the snow. The sun was higher now, and with it came warmth that cut through the last traces of cold. The storm was gone. What remained was silence, but not the kind that haunted me all those years in the cabin. This silence was alive, full of breath and space and promise. As we started down the hill, I thought about everything that had led here, the war, the guilt, the ghosts, the secret buried beneath the mountain. For so long I had been trying to run from them. But maybe they weren't meant to be erased. Maybe they were meant to guide me, like the light that had brought me out of the snow that first night. The wind picked up again, soft and cold, curling around my coat like a farewell. And as I walked with Atlas and Luna through the quiet morning, I understood something I never had before. Freedom isn't the absence of the past. It's the courage to carry it and still move forward. We kept walking until the mountain disappeared behind us. Ahead, the horizon stretched wide and bright, and the world waited, silent, untouched, alive. And for the first time since the storm began, I felt like I truly belonged to it. When the last trace of snow melted beneath my boots, I looked back one final time. The mountain was gone, swallowed by distance and silence, but I knew its secret still breathed somewhere beneath the ice. What I had found there wasn't just a hidden bunker or a lost experiment. It was the truth about what people are willing to forget to feel safe. And once you've seen that truth, there's no going back. Atlas barked softly beside me. Luna ran ahead, her paw prints marking a new path through untouched snow. For the first time in years, I didn't follow the past, I followed them toward the light. But something in the wind told me it wasn't over. Helios might have fallen silent, yet its shadow was still out there waiting. And soon it would rise again. If you've followed this far, don't look away now. Subscribe, stay close, and be ready. Because next time, the truth won't just be buried in a mountain. It will be walking among us. And when that happens, you'll want to know which side you're standing on.